Thank you, Heather. There you go. Thank you. And if anyone else is recording, please let the chair know. Hannah, as everyone on the committee knows, said a while back wouldn't be able to be here. I did hear today from Greta that she wouldn't be able to be here. And this is kind of a squeezing in an early announcement. Mary Chacon has been appointed to this committee, and at the February 15th meeting was approved unanimously by the City Council. The Appointments and Ordinance Committee recommendation was also unanimous, with much love. I'm quoting the chair of that committee. But I don't know if Mary has been sworn in, so I don't think she would even count toward quorum tonight or be able to participate, and she might be away. So with that said,
she's doing her winter travelings around the United States. So
okay. Marlo had told me Kim is here. Great.
He's here.
And Marlo had told me he would expect to be coming either in person or remotely. But
I see him.
Oh, excellent. Hey, Marlo. Great. All right, perfect. So we can start introductions. I am George Tlemcen. I'm the planning board rep to this committee. I'm the vice chair of this committee. I usually facilitate at the chair's request, and I'm chairing this meeting in her absence. I'll just call on people to introduce themselves.
MJ Adams, Director of Community and Economic Development and Planning Director Designate for the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee.
Thank you. Just going in the order I have people. Phil.
Hi, I'm the City Council rep.
Thank you. Carol.
Carol Collins, Director of Energy and Sustainability for the city.
Thank you. Nancy.
Nancy Hazard, a whatever it's called. I had surgery recently, and I swear when they put you under anesthesia, all your brain cells are taken away from you. It's hard to talk. Anyway, here I am.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I appreciate your coming, even though you're in recovery. Kim. Kim.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, hey.
There I am. Kim Boas, public member.
Thank you very much. Jonah?
Hi, Jonah Keene, member at large, public member.
Thank you. And Marlo?
Marlo Warner, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. And Anna, do you want to introduce yourself and your role?
Yeah, I'm Anna Oltman. I'm the Community Development Administrator.
Thank you very much. So looking at the agenda, updates related to the master plan. We've stopped kind of going around and calling on everyone for this, but we can do it certainly popcorn if anyone has anything they have noticed recently, positive indications about master plan related developments. Yes, Nancy.
I always look for positive things. I noticed the fact that a new grant that FERCog is getting about downtown business stuff, which I'm sure MJ can tell you all about. And I'm thrilled that Catherine Gull of the City Council reached out. She's very interested in having the city pass the opt-in code, and Carol Collins, of course, knows all about that. So those are my exciting things.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else? Yes, MJ.
We had Sustainable Greenfield was what last month was.
The one again? I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to figure out the downtown revitalization workshop happened before.
I can't remember exactly. The curb to curb was.
We had a good workshop on January 19th, which was the downtown revitalization plan update meeting. Then we also had a very well attended January 31st downtown parking meeting. And then we had a very well attended February 9th Main Street Improvement Program workshop with the engineers who are going to be doing the design work for the Main Street Improvement Program. And the other thing is that I'm on the schedule to present the feedback that we're getting in terms of the downtown revitalization plan update to city council in the middle of March, and I would welcome any one of the Sustainable Greenfield committee members to come and to add in their 2 cents, and as I'm sort of filling them in, and whatever you think is also of importance to share.
That'll be just the day before our next meeting, I would think, right? The 3rd.
It's the 15th?
Oh, no, you're right. That would be, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they wanted to share?
This is just a feel-good update. I had a friend who, his niece called me, or actually emailed me a few weeks ago, and she was planning on moving to Greenfield, and she had already set up her electric account, and was going to select a supplier that wasn't Greenfield Light and Power. Thankfully, she emailed me, and I said, well, we have our own supplier here in Greenfield, and I think it's a much better deal. And lo and behold, she signed up, and boy, she's saving a bundle. So I just want to say thanks, Carol.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Kim. I'll share one thing. I've been very heartened to see the increased proliferation of the speed monitoring signs. I assume, Marlo, you folks are putting those up, right? The speed monitor signs on various streets, 25 miles, like a Davis Street.
Yes, we have a couple of sets of them we're moving around.
Yeah. I've just been, struck with the visibility of those at least, and to tie it back into the plan that we're overseeing the implementation of. I'll refer people to page 80 of Sustainable Greenfield, the transportation chapter. The goal is neighborhoods will enjoy an improved quality of life by a reduction in the negative impact of vehicular traffic. The strategy is to implement traffic calming initiatives, and one of the implementation actions is to have more speed monitors. So I've just been very aware of that, and hopefully that'll help with some of the speed, because I know that's a very common complaint from residents all over town. All right, if there were no other things, moving on to the approval of the January meeting minutes.
Move approval?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kim. Is there any discussion, MJ? Yes.
The purchaser of the web building on Hope Street, he may be a philosopher, but I described him as a philosophy professor.
Nitpick.
Got that, Phil? Great. Are there any other comments on the content of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye.
Don't know, Carol, are you an aye or are you? Yes, so I have for Carol, I think. Great, thank you. All right.
George,
Now,
I'll
just-
abstain. I was absent.
Oh, thank you, Molly. I'm sorry. I thought everybody had their hand up. My bad. Are there any other abstentions or negative votes? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Molly. So the next is a discussion about hearing from, in parentheses, new committee members. Now, my sense of this was from our discussion last time. We were talking about speakers, and we had been focused on external speakers coming from the outside, but this kind of flowed from the idea of, well, maybe some people on the committee could serve as speakers who have a particular expertise. And when I checked in with Hannah just to clarify this item, she agreed that it wasn't necessarily restricted to new committee members. So my sense was this this item right now is to just kind of plan out who could, provide some, expertise to the committee from within, and kind of think through when that would be. So did anyone else have a different understanding, or yes, please, Jonah.
No, I don't have a different understanding. That sounds perfect. But I do have a comment, which was, I know we'd also talked about, I think Nancy had suggested working on our priority process a little bit more, developing that a little more, so we have some guidance on the topics that we want to hear about, which I agree with. And I had offered up, and I'm there on the agenda as an example, which for nature-based solutions, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've given public programs on it before. So I think it's something that, I'd be happy to talk about if it was the appropriate topic. There's various other topics I'm sure I could talk about and others could talk about as well. So I do like the idea of trying to figure out what our priority topics are as well.
And have the speaker choices flow from that and the topics flow from that. Sure.
Yeah, it could help inform as we see what our priorities are. We can say, oh yeah, that's something that I know some stuff about. I could share what I know.
Yes, Phil.
I know we've talked in the past about Mary Chicoine being a speaker to, and now that she's on, when she joins the committee, that and gets comfortable, she might be willing to talk about trees and where the tree program stands in Greenfield. She's deeply involved in that.
Okay. Carol, I see your hand. Unless that was already up.
I'm sure. Well, I just wanted to add to what Jonah was saying. My recollection also was that at some point we had talked about, and I think I brought it up, so that's why I remember. But especially with Greta, just trying to find out from her what she feels she might want from the committee, or talk a little bit more about what she's doing for the city, which is great stuff. So that's the way I interpret it, part of what was on the agenda there. And Jonah also brings a lot of skills, and it seemed we have 3 new members in the last, I don't know, it's probably been over a year, but to me it feels like a few months, that it just feels like we've been rolling, and I was thinking just giving them some room to introduce themselves more completely to the committee, if that's.
Gotcha. So you were thinking it was focused more on the newer members and getting a chance to share some of what brought them to this work and what they bring to it.
I kind of recruited Greta, and I know part of her interest in joining the committee was being new to the city and tasked with all of these things, as food director. And again, she's doing a fabulous job, but she was really looking for some support, and it felt like this committee has enough connections and avenues that could support her work. And so, just being able to give her that space.
Gotcha. And unfortunately, she's not here.
Right.
I was trying to remember if that was something she had endorsed when this came up last time, that she would be interested in doing. I sense she probably would, but
I'm sorry.
I wasn't looking at you particularly, I was just including you, but everybody else is up here. And I don't know if you had a sense of that, Carol, if anyone else recalls, Greta, if she sounded like she was, I know she is enthusiastic about what she's doing, and so. Anyone else have a different take on this? It's kind of like a couple of different angles, getting, participation and input from new committee members, and also having this dovetail with the priorities we're trying to focus on as a committee. Nancy.
When you talk about, self-introductions, new people and stuff, that kind of jogged my memory, got me thinking and I can't remember if we have done this recently or not. We do have quite a few new members, but just also offering some information about other people who've been on the committee a long time that the new people might not know who we are. So trying sort of doing some more getting to know each other kind of stuff, if that's useful to the new people.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or reflections on how to shape this idea of internal input within the committee? Does what Nancy's suggesting resonate for the folks who are newer, or yes, Phil?
I sort of miss going around the room and saying what we do in a little more detail, or what we're, I guess I'm supporting Nancy's idea that yeah, newer members might benefit from learning how the older members fit into this. So.
Any other thoughts or ideas about how to proceed? Obviously, we don't have Hannah as our chair here, and we don't have one of our newer members, and our newest member to be isn't here yet either. So didn't know. Yes, MJ.
Well, might we plan to do this at our March meeting intentionally? Just spend a little time sort of getting to know, and Jesse will be there also. So
Yes.
that I think that would be helpful. Jesse might appreciate that.
Nice. Yeah, so just, and we're talking about introductions, not more broadly, but basically related to the master plan work, I'm assuming, Nancy, that's what you were meaning?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of us are here because we may have former experience that could be appropriate for SGIC. That's why we're here, maybe, or.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, whatever people want to share, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't want to limit it.
So we'll have everyone give their own elevator pitch on themselves.
Right.
90 seconds. Everybody come prepared.
I just have to say that meeting Nancy and Phil out on a walk, talking about, my particular interest, was really helpful to get to know them better. And it would be nice if we could all get together and focus on like one topic and kind of, like MJ, take us on a tour of downtown or something along those lines that, we can all just talk about and get together and get to know each other better.
I like the idea of a hike, maybe a specific hike on Earth Day instead of a meeting.
Those trails need to be rehabbed, though. I don't know.
We could take a hike to the French King property. Oh, by the way, just another update. I tried to organize a tour for the City Council Economic Development Committee of the Industrial Park businesses. I only got one of them to come, but it was really interesting. We got a tour of Valley Steel Stamp, and the other one was Beat Fog
Nozzle, yeah.
Yeah. Valley Steel Stamp is growing gangbusters, and mostly they're making pistol parts. I tried to correct someone to say they're not a pistol manufacturer, but that is what they're doing, and that's the growth part of their business. They've met some resistance within the in the city council because of that. Bead Fog Nozzle is a more old-fashioned place with older employees. It's more like old Greenfield moved out to the industrial park. I'm not sure how this is relevant, but except that we're trying to, as George knows, rezone the French King property to make it to invite industrial development, and this was part of my project to try to get that closer. This is not terribly relevant to what we were just talking about, but it just popped into my head.
I actually have something I could share from my planning board experience, but just so we don't get too off track with this current topic, I'll wait till announcements to talk about that. But thanks for planting the seed. Is MJ's proposal of when we have full attendance, hopefully next month, and we'll have a guest who might be interested in hearing, getting oriented to what the committee's about, doing those kind of, minute and a half long, background talks about, you know, what brings us to this work and, you know, what other, you know, aspects of our background, and stuff like that are relevant. Is that any objections to that, I guess I would say, or, okay, so I'll pass that along to Hannah as far as developing the next agenda. So anything else on this topic? So we move on. It sounds like related to what Jonah was saying, that, you know, additional future things could be, you know, tied into, you know, what priorities we identify as a group, and which we want to prioritize. So if that sounds okay, move ahead. So the next is public education meetings, ideas and plans. And Phil, you're listed as the speaker or the lead on this.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that. I certainly don't have 20 minutes to talk about it, but I did look at Carol Collins's links, and the Center for New Urbanism. I don't know how much they charge for for organizing a meeting like this, but they sounded perfect. If we could persuade them or someone like them to I guess, facilitate a meeting, a larger meeting of not just our group, but the whole anybody in town who is interested. That would be great. But Carol, tell me, are they enormously expensive and too busy to do something like that?
Please, Carol, yeah.
I'm sorry, can I go or?
Please, yes.
So I did not as much follow-up as I'd hoped, but I did have an hour-long conversation with just like the most amazing planner who is now the town manager of Watertown. And he was the director of the CNU, the Congress for New Urbanism. So he did recommend reaching out to them, and it wouldn't be prohibitively expensive, but so I just haven't followed up on that yet. He did also give me some names of, so urbanism is a little bit deceptive. It you know, it doesn't mean it's only for big cities. It just, you know, it can work for communities of all sizes. But I've been following that work for decades now, and it's great and wide reaching. But so he gave me a couple of names, and those are like urban designers that would be probably, just because they're so passionate, we could get them for free. And then he did also talk about doing like a full day workshop where we could actually, and Nancy, I didn't get to respond to you, but I had asked Nancy if it was okay to send links, and then I didn't do anything until an hour ago, but good intentions. But when I was pulling all this together after our last meeting, I was like, you know, this is really what should have happened with our master planning process. And it never did. We never saw a vision of what Greenfield could be. And that was, in my opinion, I'll be nice, but it was a definite missed opportunity. And so we've never had that as part of this whole process of just like having a collective visioning or just examples. So anyway, an all-day workshop, which would be similar, I guess, to kind of what we did with the master plan. I think there were 2 all-day workshops. There was one I remember, but that would be more expensive. But so we kind of have the gamut. And then, of course, he gave me this like ginormous idea that's fabulous, but it would kill me to try to make happen. But of course, I want to do it. So long-winded answer to like, we could get somebody to come out for free who would be great. And, you know, we could kind of define what it is we want to see, or we could kind of scale up and, or maybe start that way and then see what's next. Can I add one more thing just really quickly? Sorry. So one of the people that he gave me the name has done some, it's actually form-based codes, but it's around kind of like revitalizing the community, or a lot of these things all trigger many results. So it could be under one label, but really accomplish a lot. So I put it all under like vibrant community itis or whatever. But so he did like Harvard, Littleton, Somerville, like a piece of it. And, you know, a lot of these are just small parcels or, you know, neighborhoods, if for lack of a better word, not like a whole city. So they range in density, and I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with those kinds of things. but I found some fabulous like presentations that just kind of lay things out that were appropriate to, sized appropriate on the scale of Greenfield. So anyway, there's a lot more examples. And so I kind of, and in the Littleton example, I know the planner that's there, and they had a whole outline of how they scaled up to their project, which felt really aligned with Greenfield. So anyway, long-winded again, I can try to forward that. Just give me till an hour before next month's meeting.
I'll call on myself. Thank you, Carol, for being nice, as you said. But I also really appreciate you pushing forward your ideas and vision and sharing so many resources. The ones you shared shortly before the meeting today, I didn't even get a chance to open them, let alone read them. But are those related to what you just talked about, or those additional resources you just referenced?
So I kept it really bare bones, but it was from what I recalled sharing last month. Like, I know I mentioned the Concord River Walk, which is a pocket neighborhood out in Concord, Mass. And then Ross Chapin, who's the architect of that, who kind of pioneered it. I know I thought I mentioned the Congress for New Urbanism. And then I did bring, I just put in that link. If you do nothing else, the last link is to a video. That kind of stuff. It's a very visual of like transforming streetscapes. It's pretty, it's just awesome. I wish I knew how to do that, because I think a lot of times people need to see it to really kind of understand. So it's only like a minute long. And then of course, afterwards I was like, oh no, I meant to, but that from what I remember is what I mentioned last month.
Thank you. And I'll continue that. I know at last month's meeting, when we were brainstorming about this issue, and Phil, I think you were put as the lead on this because you had suggested having some kind of, public meeting, and had the idea had come from me to, have the planning board included. And I came away from that, and then I realized, and I looked over the draft minutes, and I was realizing I wasn't really sure what I was going to the planning board with. So I was looking forward to this item to clarify input from the committee on what we're trying to do and how I should approach the planning board about being partner in that. So I'm glad to hear further from other people about how to proceed. Did you want to continue, Phil, or Nancy? Good. Either way.
Well, I guess I was thinking about, what might be a process to move this forward, this idea forward. And would it be helpful if a couple of people got together and put their heads together and came back with some kind of a proposal? Or can we figure out how to move forward as a group in our regular monthly meeting?
Well, I would just respond, if we were going to have a subgroup working out, we'd want to give them clear direction or some general idea of what we were requesting of the small group. And I know we have the additional item today about, looking at our priorities, and this sounds like this is a very kind of overreaching idea that could influence a lot of different aspects of what we're talking about on other master plan goals. So it seems that this could be helpful to, further that discussion as well. My thought.
Yeah, I think this discussion for me would be helpful after the next discussion. The order is a little odd for me. It'd be good to get clarity on our priorities and then decide what we want to do about it.
Yes, Carol.
I love all the resources. I also didn't have an opportunity to look at any of what you sent us, Carol, and I know you have talked about a lot of those organizations in the past. So I'm eager to really dive into those and get clearer about, what the offers are. I've looked at some of them in the past, but thank you.
Carol, please.
So first of all, the links were just at your leisure, nothing, but because I mentioned them and I said I would try to, I thought it would be helpful if people wanted to look at them. I don't necessarily, so I was just following up on that. But in terms of framing something that is of benefit to Greenfield, you know, some of the things I was looking at, I was like, well, is that really our top priority, or is that really what, you know? So I think kind of in the vein of what's been talked about is it would make a lot of sense to try to frame something, because even when I was speaking with the planner, that you know, it's really important to know what it is the goal is and how to best get that information so that it can either further other things along or kind of help further discussions that are coming down the pike. So I would just say that again, in before we start having a committee or whatever, trying to frame that topic.
Yes, Phil.
I guess I take as my model here the meetings that MJ's been having, that are taking on some really concrete things. We might be about to rip up Main Street and reorganize it and change the way people cross the street and change the way people park. And what she's done is brought with some money, has brought advisors in to talk about what best practices are. For me, it's been incredibly informative, and I'd love to hear more about the feedback. But for example, the very controversial idea of going from angle parking to parallel parking and putting a bike lane in there. Can I ask, would it be inappropriate to ask MJ what the feedback was on that?
We're in the process of gathering it still. It's going, I'll have a report out on March 7th to our Downtown Greenfield Alliance on sort of a summary. And like I said, I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, is that we're actually going to talk with City Council about it so that they're aware of the feedback and information input that we've been getting from the community about the different things that we're proposing before we move too far forward, too fast on anything.
I can just say that at the meeting, there was a lot of it. People were very active and providing a lot of input.
So that'll be forthcoming in March, I guess. I'm just sharing that with you, Phil, is that we're pulling it together. We'll be sharing it with City Council, and, you know, certainly still have the opportunity to engage in conversations about it.
So with that as the model, you were saying, Phil, one thing we don't have as a committee is money, right, to do that. But so you were thinking of having something that would be a public, I mean, we have obviously done public events, and this is kind of getting back to the idea of doing that. Jonah, was your hand starting to come up there? Oh, okay, sorry.
Phil, was there an aspect of what we've been doing with the downtown piece that you think we could do some further education around?
Well, what I liked was it was inviting, it was showing what some possibilities and inviting public feedback. And I think more broadly, we're talking about how to think about Greenfield in terms of its sustainability. And, you know, we've got some hot topics right on our plate, and your people did a good job of raising them, showing the possibilities, and inviting feedback. And I think that's the model I'm looking for. If we could get someone from the Congress of whatever, what's it called? Congress of the new urbanism. Yeah, to sort of lay out what new urbanism looks like in various towns, and get Greenfield to think about, you know, what would that look like in Greenfield? What are the opportunities for us? And you know, we do now have a format where we can do a meeting in John's On with Zoom and get, you know, dozens of people in the room and dozens of people watching on TV. So I guess that's what I had in mind. And you know, if Carol can deliver the celebrity, we could probably get John Zahn and GCTV to cooperate.
I want the library. Let's do it in the new
The
library.
new library, well, that pushes it till after June, but that would be great.
Oh, is it
if
June?
nothing
I
else,
thought it was next month.
I think it's June.
No.
We just got an update
Yeah.
in the mail, and I think we lost the April date.
So if I could, so you're talking about kind of the model of these meetings that have been happening that are about very specific proposals. But this would seem like it's more of a potential vision, bringing in other kind of general concepts of, of life in a city and how they could, it's not this street or this intersection of this neighborhood. It's kind of general principles, it sounds like, that Carol is offering us, and having someone talk about kind of a higher up level of envisioning, which I know appeals to me to expand, public awareness of those kind of concepts and possibilities. Because it would seem like that's a good service the committee could have of trying to offer an opportunity like that. And I think, Carol, you're researching this and keeping those things in mind, those resources and stuff. Is there a practical issue? You said delivering the celebrity, Phil. Is that something, Carol? But that we're talking about cost, right? Of the people you're talking. Is that? Yes, please. Yeah, I was asking. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think we could get a speaker for no cost, or very little cost, and I think I can cover that. The good news is it's bad for the world, but the mild winter is great for my budget since I pay all those heating bills. So I can probably squeeze something out.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I missed it before when you were talking about the amount of cost. Joan, is that your hand up now? No? Okay, sorry. I don't mean to pick on Carol, yes.
Jonah looks like he's on like the Bonanza or something. He's in his it looks great. But
Little Joe riding in the background.
I didn't get to see is it the Main Street redesign presentation? Was that recorded that we can watch if we didn't get to see?
Yes.
Okay, great.
That's the February 9th one, Carol?
I don't remember all the dates.
Okay, the January 19th was when we did the downtown revitalization plan update. And then January 31st was the parking one.
Yep, then it's February 9th.
Then February 9th was the Main Street Improvement Program. That was the Fuss and O'Neill engineers from Marlowe's, under Marlowe's. We have a recording of that. We can get that out.
Is that what you were talking about, Phil, that you want to use?
Yeah. Well, I went to all three of them, but that one was particularly, well, they're all great. And that one is the most recent, I guess.
So
Yeah,
where are those recordings posted? Are they on GCTV or are they on the Greenfield website, or how do we find those?
Well, the website just changed over, so they will be there eventually, but I'm not going to make, I think we're in a transition on that. I think probably GCTV is probably the safest place to go for that. But what I'm happy to do is we'll pull together a listing and send out the email tomorrow for all three workshops, the recording, where you can access the recordings and the PowerPoint presentations.
I was able to access the master plan within seconds after going on the website. I was pleased about that.
And the GCTV recordings are on YouTube.
Yeah. So let me ask, I mean, if anyone else wants to chime in, but it sounds like there's this kind of proposal for sometime in the next few months, having an event that would have kind of a higher level, have a presentation, a higher level look at these kind of concepts. Is that something that the committee is generally supportive of? And pass on to Hannah. I see a thumbs up from Nancy. I see several thumbs up. Is there anyone with a down some or want to express concerns about that, or Nancy, now you've changed your thumb direction.
I'm just modeling what a neutral thumb.
Oh, thank you. And that's Kim is neutral. Thank you. Yes, Phil.
Yeah, just to clarify, some of the concepts that Carol has mentioned, like infill development, what are people doing with infill development? What does that look like?
That's a great
yeah.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, and it, you know, it applies to different parts of Greenfield. The other one, form-based zoning. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Form-based code. I'd love to hear more about that. And to the extent that our guest celebrity who's doing this for free can offer videos or photographs or show us what it looks like. I think you can convey a lot of information really quickly and open people's eyes. And I'd be happy to work with you, Carol, to try to pull this together.
Great. Thank you. And I'll just say too, which I didn't mention yet, but I feel like I have to, is in putting together some of the links, Greenfield already has a lot of these things happening. There's the Deerfield Street, what's that called, MJ? The tiny houses or the
ADU?
Oh, the Green River Commons?
That's it. The Green River Commons is a similar, you know, that's an infill project, higher density. There's downtown already has tree-lined, beautiful streets with beautiful lighting and, you know, so we've created a lot of these spaces already. So it's great that, you know, I think it would be good to also show that we already have a lot of the pieces in place to enhance. But I agree that the visuals go so much further than anything else.
Are there any further thoughts on this topic? It sounds like I'll pass on to Hannah and we'll hear the recording of the minutes, 2 minutes about this, but also it sounds like Phil was willing to partner with Carol about kind of framing this up, and it sounds like maybe reporting back next month. Is that fair to say from the two of you about where you're at with this? Does that seem reasonable?
Whatever progress we've made, yeah.
You could get together an hour before the meeting, Carol, so.
Always happy to meet with Carol.
So if that's okay to move, unless there are any last thoughts on this, should we move ahead? Or other broad-based topic? So this is, priorities discussion continues, whiteboard question mark. And I remember at one point we were talking about having a whiteboard here in the room. Well, we don't have most of you here in the room. So that's challenging to do. And we had talked about a virtual whiteboard thing. So I know this has been a kind of a challenging process because we put together the spreadsheet and then kind of what do we do with it? And we got looking at it last time, and I think we got through one item. So, and they're all important and broad topics that you spend a lot of time on. So I would have deferred to, or assumed Hannah would take the lead on this if she were here. I wonder if anyone else has a sense of how we should proceed at this point on this, moving this further ahead with our priorities. Since we have this as a tool, as a resource, this spreadsheet, and if we should just start to keep going down it and focus on that, because so just throwing that out there. Sorry to not have a more organized, plan for how we attack this. Yes, Jonah.
I'll be more clear with my hand. Excuse me. It's a lengthy list for us to spend a lot of time on each one in these meetings, I would think. And so I wonder, for now, in the time we have, maybe a slightly different approach of picking a couple that we want to focus on. But I do wonder about some out of meeting time spent on narrowing this list. And I think we could develop a process. I'm happy to be involved with that, where we had talked some point about a system for individually marking priorities. and seeing where we see the most alignment among the members of the committee. I think that then we can focus on that smaller group that we have narrowed down to spend more time talking about. To me, that would be the best use of our time, rather than going through each one and discussing in detail, which could be quite a multi-meeting process.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other reactions to the Jonah's input or thoughts? I know I'll say I agree with that, that, you know, the more efficient we can be. And I think as long as we're just contributing individually to this by like adding initials and that kind of a thing, we're not deliberating. That's my sense of it, outside of meetings, as long as we're not having interaction about this, but just offering our individual input. And I agree that would be much better. It would require us to do the homework. Each time we leave the meeting, I think, oh, I'm going to go through that spreadsheet, and I'm doing a Carol. I'm getting and say, oh my God, I haven't done it. And not to single you out, Carol. Procrastination is a common habit for a lot of us. But it would take some deliberate dedication, and maybe some reminders from Hannah or something to finish our homework on this, so we could have that incorporated prior to the meeting, and maybe so that's my thought about that. I agree with the general strategy. Anybody else? I saw you nodding, Phil. I don't know if you.
No, it's hard to do this without Hannah, but I do remember that Nancy had some thoughts about some things that she didn't think aligned with us, with the Sustainable Greenfield goals as much as others. And, maybe if a little trimming on her part might serve what Jonah was suggesting. Nancy has her hand up, George.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I was actually reading what Nancy had said from the minutes last time. Go ahead, Nancy.
So the point that I was trying to make is that there are a lot of important things, but where can SGIC make a difference? That was more the focus that I was thinking of. I was hoping that 2 meetings ago, we talked about the capabilities of the electronic process called Whiteboard. And apparently Christian knew something about it, and Hannah said she knew a little bit about it, but though neither of those people are here, and it just doesn't seem to ever happen. because it doesn't. There's not enough time in the day. But I think maybe Jonah's idea of a couple people getting together and trying to hone it is good. I still dream that electronic whiteboard idea exists, and that we could just do it, because it seems important to get everybody's input and see kind of, it's that voting process, where's everybody's thoughts about this, and filling that out would be also engages each person to deeply think about, what are their top 3 things or whatever. But if that's impossible, which is beginning to feel like it is, but maybe not, I certainly would be happy to be one of the people who worked with Jonah or a third person to try to hone this down and come back.
Well, I'll call on myself for a second, because my understanding of Jonah's proposal was different. My understanding of Jonah's proposal that each of us would individually go through the spreadsheet and offer our input, so that just because we can't all do it, it's hard to do it on all the things during our limited time in the meeting. And that would be good use of our time, help us each focus, and then that input could be consolidated. That was my understanding. Jonah, I don't want to speak for you though.
That was what I was saying, but I do like the idea, particularly from those who are much more experienced with this work, of weeding out things that seem like not the best fit for our committee. I think there are folks here that could do a good job of saying this isn't the most productive use of our committee's time. So I think both would be helpful. just to help us narrow down. I mean, the whole goal, right, is to, there's so many things we could be working on, is to narrow us down as much as possible.
Yes, Carol, you had a reaction.
Yeah, a few, I guess. I just think that I'm going to be blunt. We've talked about how to address this table for probably more time than we've actually looked at the table. And I'm a fan of let's just dig in. And it is a big deal. And kind of the whole reason I thought we started this process, however many months ago, was to kind of get direction for the next year and what it was that we were going to focus on. And we're already at like 4 months. And I mean, some people put in a lot of effort to put their notes on. So we've already got a good start. And not that I'm saying we have to be tedious to go through everything, but I do think that collectively our answers are greater than any one of us, because we all have different pieces of knowledge. So there were some things that I was reading that someone else maybe identified as a priority that, you know, I wasn't aware that there was some piece of that either going on. So I think if we can all just spend a, you know, maybe it is a full meeting or 2 half meetings, I think we could get through it and get, you know, to another iteration. But I just get a little nervous about having a subgroup go off and decide what it is without having all of those pieces. And so I don't know, I'm not trying to be a squeaky wheel, but I just think that to be the most effective, to come out with something that is truly collaborative, that somehow we, whether we all go through it again on our own and we get into colors, I think we can do that. It's a Google Doc. We can all be little mammals. Aren't there little animals already that we are? So just everything's identified, and then maybe we start. I don't know if we have time next month, but to just, all right, let's do it. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. MJ.
I thought at one of the meetings earlier that we had sort of tagged the different things that were listed there as either already in process or nobody's doing this, or I forgot what the categorizations were.
They're on them.
Oh,
If you want to see it.
but it would
On
be,
the upper left.
it would be helpful if, you know, if we saw some things that, you know, that people were identifying as needing attention, or if it was something, you know, I think the question is, Nancy's question is a good one, is what makes sense for the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee to be focusing on? And so it felt like there were so many things here that it's just too many. And if we could, as a group, in some ways collectively identify 2 or 3 or 5 things that we all more or less agree are important for us to be working on, and then to spend our time and energy sort of teasing that out and figuring out what we want to do and how we might see that we could be helpful in advancing that. You know, some sort of prioritization or culling of this list, I think, is critical before we spend a lot of time going line by line on it. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, Bill.
I like the idea of boiling it down to 4 or 5 things that we all agree on. That would definitely move it forward.
I'll say too, I realize and I appreciate what you're saying, Carol, that some of us have put more time into this as far as making comments and going through each one than others. I would say you are one, Carol, who's done more. I am one, I'll confess, who has done less. So I think, you know, kind of following up on Jonah's suggestion of, you know, between meeting homework, some people have already done that homework, and maybe the rest of us have to catch up and make sure everyone's input has been on this, to then to see if, both from the point of view of the number of people who support something, but also how it fits into those 4 categories and ultimately says something is something we can make a difference about, might be good. Yes, sir.
I agree with what folks are saying, and I feel some of Carol's frustration with the amount of time this is taking. I feel like the thing that we have lacked is a set process for narrowing. It's just, we've had some steps of adding information and input onto this form, but we haven't really had, this is how we are going to narrow it down. And that's what I am happy to help be a part of. I think we just need a couple people to say, okay, this is our system, or we could do it collectively and just make it happen. If we say that our goal is 4 or 5, if we go through and rank them in some way that we each get 2 votes, and we talked about that idea, we each get 2 or 3 votes of what our big priorities are. And then maybe we end up with, 10 that are rise to the top of getting multiple votes. And then those could be discussion topics that we to talk about in this meeting and narrow it down to an actual 4, or whatever our goal is. That's our priority. I think there's a process that could work. We just have to focus on that being the goal, as opposed to just providing input.
Yes, Phil.
Here's a proposal. Everybody make a list of the 3 top, what they think are the 3 top things we should be working on. Bring them in next meeting and see if there's a consensus.
Well, I think that was kind of what had been suggested in the past by Hannah, and I think what Jonah's saying is, don't wait till next meeting to bring those in, and then take our time, put it on the document. So then the document is available, and perhaps, again, deferring to Hannah in her role, as she can come in with a proposal and maybe confer with a couple other committee members, come in with a proposal. Here's what it looks like. Kind of have it pre-organized so that it is distributed. Here's what looks to be, the priority a lot of people have. Here's what looks like might fit in with the make a difference kind of interpretation. And what does the committee think of that? And the committee can react to the proposal and say, yes, that looks good, to narrow it down, or no, I think this one has to stay in there, or something like that. But I think the before meeting, input by all of us, especially who haven't done as much, and kind of organizing it with a proposal for the committee would be the most helpful. But it's also not decision-making outside of the meeting, as Carol was expressing a concern about, and which I agree with. I don't think we want to all have input into it, but the chair could serve us by organizing the material based on our input between meetings. Does that sound like it kind of congeals the different approaches we're talking about? I see a nod from Carol. Yes, Phil. I see a shake of a head from Kim.
I haven't looked at the spreadsheet lately. I'm bad, but have we in fact put the priorities in so that you could just so that Hannah could just go and say, okay, these are the ones that are the numbers already there for her to do that? Nancy's got her hand up.
Yes.
I've looked at it a lot, and I think the hope was, I think the answer is not really. The hope was that we were going to, in the absence of being in person and being able to put dots on things that you care about, we asked people to put their initials in on, things they cared about. So I went through the table looking at how many people's initials are on this one? How many people's initials are on that one? Does something rise to the top? And the answer is not quite, because there aren't that many initials. Carol was good in that she not only put her initials, but made a comment about why it's of great importance or whatever. Other people followed the instructions and just put their initials in, which was okay. So I think the answer is no. There's I think, Kim, I see quite a few of your initials there. I think, Phil, you have 2 or 3 in there, and Jonah, I think you have a couple. So I don't know why I feel like they're not there, but when you look at it, it doesn't shrink down so readily.
Thank you.
Maybe
I agree, Nancy.
Maybe you could go back at this point and maybe put in, instead of, for example, for me, instead of just initialing, I could say initial and say, this is where I think SGIC could make big impact. Or, in a lot of cases, it's just SGIC maybe speaking up and supporting something which is actually going to get implemented by nonprofits or other people. It's not like we would actually necessarily do anything other than say, this is are, you know, a high priority for the town or for the master plan in this committee. But yeah, I'm frustrated with the process.
Kim, you had a couple reactions. Did you want to add anything further from your perspective or?
Me react? I'm sorry. I
Well, no,
apologize.
you were shaking your head and then you were kind of agreeing with that.
Well, I'm looking at the spreadsheet now, and you know, it still doesn't gel for me. And I know I've looked at it not in the recent past, but you know, over time, that since it's been set up, and I'm still saying, God, there's so much here. There's so much breadth to what we do and think about that, you know, are we thinking near-term things? Are we thinking medium-term things or long-term? You know, so I get wrapped up and I get lost in all of the things that we're involved in, what the city is doing now, and it's just so hard for me to create priorities. I mean, I know what I want. I know what I think that the city has ignored, and for me, that's trails. But I don't get that sense from other people as to what is their big priority. And I think if I understood that and we talked about that more, and for me, getting together in person works so much better than doing a Zoom meeting. I would just rather, you know, punch the mute button and nod my head. So my feeling is this gets hashed out, you know, much better when we're all together at a table and doing it, as opposed to trying to get a whiteboard, you know, so it works for everybody on Zoom and all of us looking individually at a spreadsheet that encompasses a whole bunch of things. So to me, if we could all get together and sit down and say, you know, this is what I'm passionate about now. And somebody also saying, this is, you know, from the city, what's the city's priority? Because obviously Phil and MJ and Marlo, you're representatives of another aspect other than me and Nancy and other people. So, you know, I don't have that background in Greenfield, and I feel like I need a better background on what's happening before I begin to prioritize. So, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. It's not well thought out, but that's just sort of where I am mentally in this process.
Yes, Karen.
I might be getting cranky, but we could have already been like halfway through the list by now. I'm hearing everyone, and we're not in person, so let's just do it. Or if we want to pick 3 top things, but I agree wholeheartedly. I'll pick an example that I know off the top of my head. I know Nancy wants to do education on energy upgrades to your home. I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because it's highly complicated, and we need to, things need to happen, but it needs to be thought on a much bigger scale. And I don't think it's something that we should be doing as a committee. It's something I'll do in my work, but it's not something that I think the committee should be doing, because it's not going to produce the benefits that we want. I know Nancy's not happy with what I'm saying right now, but I'll go to the mat on that one. And that's just one that I can think of off the top of my head. So there's other things like that, like Kim was just saying, there's either things already in the work, or there's avenues of you know, other departments that are making things, you know, I'm just, again, thinking theoretically. But so I do think that collectively, we won't need to spend an hour on each item. A lot of them we can just blast through, and then there's going to be other ones that are going to need a little more discussion. And we could have been on the 10th one by now, but that's it. And I do have to leave a little early, so I'll hang in as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Nancy.
Okay, well, I'll add one thought. And Carol, that's a good segue to an example. I like your example of the energy thing, because I think that's a place where SGIC can say this is a high priority. Not that we're going to do anything about it as a committee, but rather that we're expressing, why this is important and talking about NGOs. So in fact, Greenfield is going to be holding a series of workshops. And so we're picking up that ball, and it would be nice to know if SGIC, was supportive of doing that kind of thing. So I'm going to share one other thought that when I was looking through the whole table, and I don't know if this is helpful, but I ended up sort of coming up with, this is maybe for Kim, with sort of 3 areas of how to group things differently than the master plan does. So instead of, housing and blah, 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 that there's issues that have to do with people health in Greenfield. There's issues that have to do with planet health. And then there's issues that have to do with economic development. And those kind of jumped out at me as themes, and I was able to take a lot of things in the table, put them under those 3 categories and for myself, and then prioritize them for myself of thinking about, okay, where can SGIC, weigh in on these things and make a difference? Clearly on economic development with MJ here and everything that's going on with the downtown, all of that stuff is stuff that SGIC can have a big impact on. And, but, it's, well, I guess people health, planet health. I mean, the energy stuff is the planet health thing. It's a people health thing. And I think if you put things in terms of what do we care, what do we as a committee care about? We care about the people in this community, and we care about the planet. I mean, those are ultimately the 2 things we care about. And then there's the question of how do we support those things? What are our highest priorities in those 2 categories? I mean, now that's really shrinking it down to simplicity, but for me, it's helpful.
Thanks, Nancy, for that. I'll call on myself. First, I want to acknowledge that Marlo had texted or chatted that he had to leave. And Carol, I know you have to leave soon, so thanks for the heads up. And we will still have a quorum after that, pointing out. And I wanted a couple things. One is in response to Kim. I know you were saying, Kim, that what kind of brought you to this, or what stands out for you, your passion is about the trail issue and stuff like that. And I know each of us have various things that we've kind of in our life. The kind of elevator speech we'll be giving next week will reveal some of that. But also, part of this exercise is not just to get the committee refocused, but also for the benefit of newer members, as I recall, is the idea to get a broader sense of what are the types of issues. And I think that, this issue of where can we make a difference, or where are things already happening, is a good one. And I appreciate, Carol, you getting us down to focus on a particular, because the thing you're talking about, I think, is the first one on the spreadsheet under public facilities, services, and energy, about the mass save type of thing. And I would say that, and you were making the point, Carol, that you as a town employee are already working on that. And Nancy, you're making the point that there's a private organization you're part of that is working on that. And I would say this committee's, doesn't need to focus on that at all, because there are 2 entities focused on that and working on that. And that would be something I would just take off the list. It's very important, and it's very much in keeping with the master plan, but it's not something that's being neglected. It's something that's being worked on in a private, public, kind of combination of efforts. So that would be one reaction I would have to that particular example. I just offer that. Yes, Carol, you want to?
I just want to follow up, because I think Nancy was asking for support of Greenfield's work. And if there's somehow we can do that, maybe that's a good role we play. But yes, I agree. That's not for us to focus on, but it's great if there's someone else doing it already that we can support. That doesn't require time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Carol.
I'm just playing with you. I'm gonna keep talking. No, anyway, I do have to go in a few minutes. I'm just gonna throw something out. I've used this quote way too many times recently, but Emily Dickinson said, "I dwell in possibility," and it keeps coming to mind because as much as things are tedious and complicated and stuff, I think it's hard not to focus on what it is we're actually trying to do. So in the, to tack on to what Nancy was saying, which I think is a really great big picture way to look at things, I would say that increasingly, I've brought this up to this committee before. So George and Nancy, you may remember, it's been years, but the UN has there's 17 goals of sustainable development. The first one is alleviate poverty in all of its forms. Increasingly, I see that being adopted by lots of organizations and colleges and NGOs. It's just a driving principle. So for an example, Kim, and I'm not picking on anyone, it's just what I can think of off the top of my head without it in front of me, but talking about trails is one issue. Another one that's also mentioned somehow, I think related to pollinator gardens or things like that, but there's the 10-minute garden initiative that aims to provide quality green space within a 10-minute walk of every resident in a community. And that's where I would say keeping that priority in mind would be a bigger focus of our resources or to support. Not that trails aren't, but I think in terms of what's the greater benefit to the community, that's the kind of stuff that I'm hoping we kind of get into, of not necessarily making value judgments, but really looking at the world is changing. It's amazing. And it's finally getting to where, people are thinking about the things that have been a priority for decades, that it's just been the fringe. Nancy, you've been there the whole time, like advocating for all these things that now finally people are listening. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to use that same lens. And on that note, I think I'll hang out for another minute, but I gotta go. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carol. Yes, Nancy.
Thank you, Carol. And as a big picture person, so for example, again, that personal health, and you mentioned the 10-minute garden everywhere. And I'll say, I think that the trails just fit right completely into that. So I think if this group could articulate in a very big picture way that what we're interested in is promoting things that have to do with personal health, for example, and then talk about what are those things. Those things are, having access to green space, having access to, Highland Park and recreation, and food security, for example, and the schools, the transit, and put it in those terms, then it's, I don't know, people can hear that we're in their camp, we're rooting for them, we're working towards making their lives better in every way that we can. And I think it would be great if we could articulate that. It's a simple thing, but a complicated thing maybe, or difficult thing, because, of course, we all know that we create master plans in order to improve our lives. But how often do we actually say that out loud, say those words out loud? And I love you. I'm surprised by the quote of Emily Dickinson, "I dwell in possibility." I guess I've heard it before, but I don't think of her as being a person who would say something like that, but I love it. Thank you.
I'm just thinking with Carol exiting shortly, it seems like we've identified a few different things to work on before the next meeting. One is I got the overall, I know Kim, you didn't sound as enthusiastic about it, but I sense the majority of the committee was encouraging those of us who haven't to spend some time with the spreadsheet and offer our individual input so that can be an actual tool that might be able to help differentiate some of these things. And I'll let Hannah know there's some interest in this being incorporated somehow to be able to maybe frame things a little differently come the next meeting, not to decide on taking things out, but to perhaps make a proposal. unless I hear objection to that. Also, each of us is supposed to come up with our 90-second elevator speech about our background and what brought us here to help each other, remind each other, or inform each other, and also to welcome Jesse in that way, who will be our guest. And lastly, Phil and Carol were going to confer about the kind of proposal for a broader thing and come back to us. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Carol. Take care. I know you got to leave. Is there any further thought on this discussion, or should we segue into kind of announcements and wrapping up? Any last thoughts on this? Yes, Phil.
I do think an all hands meeting, a full meeting devoted to the spreadsheet where we're all looking at the same thing and just thrashing through it might be the way to get some closure on this. I do think we should all do our homework first, though. Thanks.
Sure. And it sounds like, I know Carol was proposing maybe a whole meeting devoted to this, or maybe that was you, Kim. And it doesn't sound like that would be next time, since we already have a guest, but perhaps, keep them one beyond that. I did want to check about, oh yes, Kim.
No, I just want to say that I think in the interim, I'm going to go through the spreadsheet and just, say, this is, I don't know, Phil said 3. Maybe I'll do 4. I don't know. These are my priorities. This is what I think I would like to see done. And I encourage other people to do that too. I also like to comment on a thing that Carol said, and I'm sorry that she left, that, she didn't want to do community type energy efficiency things, which I sort of support and did many years ago. That she's doing that. Well, recreation is doing the trails, but no one's, supposedly, the city, each city department does a part of this plan. And to say that, I'm taking care of it doesn't fly with me. And I'm not, Carol's doing a great job. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we're here to create a direction, and the city and those people who do the work, that's what we do for them. And I just thought I needed to say that. It just kind of hit me like, oh, we're taking care of it. Well, then why do you need us? We're a part of this. So just want to make that statement.
Thank you.
And I Kim, I appreciate you saying that, because I can't tell you, part of the reason that I haven't been entering a lot of stuff in on the spreadsheet is because I feel like I work for the residents of Greenfield. And I know what I might think the priorities might be, but I feel like this process in Sustainable Greenfield and the committee here actually gives me the direction to do the work, to set the priorities, to do the work that I do. And so I've always appreciated this committee's role in reminding me what's important, as was articulated in the master plan several years ago, and how that has evolved over time and informs the work I do on a day-to-day basis.
And thank you, MJ. I'll just offer that when I'm going through this, I'm not considering what's important to me. Things that have drawn me to this work, I might be more informed, like around transportation issues than some other issues. But I'm trying to look at these all equally and trying to consider what would be these ideas that we previously came up with home, what doesn't have a home. And that's what I was thinking of with this issue about the energy stuff, that it seems like it have a public home and a private home, but there are some things that aren't being focused on by any particular entity. And that can be the kind of thing that the committee can focus on. So I'm trying to, I'm using my own perspective and priorities, but I'm trying to look at it more broadly as what will benefit the community.
Yeah, I know I have my biases, but that's why I said earlier that I haven't lived here long enough and been involved in the process to know where and who, what the community feels like. And so, MJ, Carol, Marlo, Phil, and long-term residences that are on this committee, they're, they're the people that are ultimately going to guide and influence me as to, what the community thinks. So I have my biases, but that I need the bigger picture.
Yeah. And I'll offer again that part of it, I mean, this master plan got a lot of public endorsement. And so this kind of is the guide to, just by going through it, so many hundreds of pages, but just by going through the higher level things can help give a sense of that. So what the priorities were established as. Nancy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe a segue to the meeting tonight, the CPC meeting, that I've really enjoyed looking at the proposals that have bumbled up to that committee, because that's certainly an expression of what residents in Greenfield care about. And it's another way of looking at that. And I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to the meeting tonight.
If it's okay to segue to planning ahead and stuff or announcements, one thing I wanted to check about, because it was referenced to, I know, Kim, you were expressing your preference to having people in person. I'll tell you, I'm pleased with how well this hybrid thing, it's so smooth. And I in here, certainly, yes, thank you very much, Anna, for overseeing this, because it's just been amazingly nice to be able to work together. But I also have a bias for us being in person if possible. So next month, I know this is the CPC, speaking of them, I think they have this booked already. Is that, because they had been meeting here when they weren't doing public things.
Yeah.
So it may not be determined yet, but I don't know if you happen to know or.
I don't know.
Well, you know Anna, so.
Christian's the one who usually has got his.
Very good, okay.
Calendar.
So we'll have to stay tuned for where that'll be, and the hybrid rules that anyone can come in as long as we have a person here on site, those are extended through April, is that right? I think, I'm turning to you as the.
I know, and I.
You may not know,
honestly
so.
don't know off the top
Okay.
of my head.
Because we don't know if they're going to revert to the more restrictive pre-COVID rules at some point, or some, mix. But this will be, I believe, next month, the same.
March, it extends
The same.
at least through the end of March.
Okay, so this will be the same arrangement if people just prefer to participate remotely, as long as we have a quorum overall and we have someone here in person or at the John's On, wherever we'll be. So I just wanted to touch on that because it was a little uncertain at this point. Are there any other announcements people want to make? Nancy.
Yeah, I had some events I wanted to mention. I don't know how many of you get Green and Greenfield's event announcement e-blasts, but if you don't and you want to receive them, please let me know. We are doing a Lawns to Meadows series, and our first in-person speaker was supposed to be tonight, and it was just canceled because of the weather. But we are going to reschedule that, and there will be a couple of other speakers that will be following that. And then with the Mass Save, which I was going to hold the first, we were going to hold the first one for income eligible people last week, and that was canceled due to health issues. And we're exploring new dates, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. And Peter Wingate of the community, who runs the Community Action Program, energy program there, is going to be bringing a couple of his staff people. I think it's going to be a really great opportunity for people to get inspired to sign up. That's our ultimate goal. And our second Mass Save workshop will be held on April 6th, and that's for everybody who's doesn't fit in the income eligible group.
Thank you. I've been getting your e-news for years and it's very helpful. So,
Sign me up. I don't think I get those.
Thank you, Kim.
I just want to, as I alluded to earlier, I want to announce in relation to what Phil brought up about the what had been a proposal for planned industry up in the French King, and that had obviously been proposed by the planning board to the city council, and the city council voted against it, and then had a reconsideration, and it got more positive votes than the majority of the council, but it still didn't pass. required number of votes, percentage of votes to have the zoning change approved. And I just want to say the planning board is still feeling that would be a good step for the community, that it is in keeping with the economic development goals of the master plan. And so at the next planning board meeting that we're going to revisit that, and perhaps, obviously it's the board's decision, but perhaps I think everyone on the board has expressed support of it. So I believe maybe proposed again to the city council, either in an adjusted version or maybe even the same version. I don't know. So I just wanted to mention that. Yes, Phil.
Yeah, I can, the mayor has a new proposal that she hasn't made public yet, but her plan, I think it's a good one, is to have you guys talk about it among yourselves and then invite the public and the city council to discuss it again before it gets to formal public meeting, so that she's thinking to have a series of meetings about it to try to build some more support for it, not just among the council, but also in the city. So I'm a big believer in it, but we need to get a couple more votes in the council.
Any other announcements? Next meeting is on, what is it, the 23rd, somewhere? And Jesse Dean is supposed to be our guest at that time. So. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A second.
Second.
Thank you, Kim. I assume there's no discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Anna, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.